Hello, hello. It is the fourth day of Vlogmas. Every day this month until Christmas, I will be going live here on my YouTube channel at 2 p.m. Eastern. So I'm hoping, as you know, December is always such a hard month to focus on work and that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that this gives you something to break up the monotony of that job. Hey, Alicia. But I also know some of y'all really be working. And so maybe you just watch this on the repeat, and that's fine by me. Um, all of the videos that I have done this week have been about moving abroad, whether you're interested in leaving your home country like permanently and never coming back, or if it's just something that you want to try out. I think the videos we've done this week where we talked about nomad living, we talked about planning scouting trips, any of those videos could be helpful. Um, but before we jump into today's video, um, just in case this video happens to find new people, I wanted to say hello and introduce myself. My name is Delia Borchade. Although most people know me as Picky Girl Travels the World, I left the US 7 years ago to live the life of my dreams. And that sounds kind of hokey, but for real though, when I left, that is exactly what I wanted to do. And I feel like I've been able to do that. And so on this channel, I share what that life looks like, what it's like living abroad, traveling, as well as how to get your money right so that you can do the thing that you've always wanted to do because um people argue and debate about whether or not money buys happiness. I personally think it does, but there is no argument that money gives you options. And so those are the things I talk about on this channel. So if that sounds like stuff you want to hear more about, hit the subscribe button to keep videos like this showing up in your feed. Be sure that you are subscribed. The like button is always a good idea. That lets the YouTube algorithm know that you like these kinds of video and that you want more. So, hey, y'all. I'm glad, Alicia. I'm glad. I think because these lives are meant to be fairly short. So, because everybody does not want to sit through an hour or an hour and a half live. So, I thought this would be a cool way to hit on some of these topics that maybe, we don't want to talk about for a whole hour or whatever. Our Black Utopia says money absolutely can buy happiness if that's the only thing standing in your way of happiness. 100%, 100%. All right. So I told y'all today we are continuing with our theme of about moving abroad. And I've said this, I don't know how many times in videos on this channel, that if you want to leave your home country and create a life somewhere else, I think the biggest um, what are we going to call it? I think the two big things there are mindset and expectations. Like having the proper mindset and put having virtually no expectations. Like those are the things I think that set you up to be abroad long term. And when I really thought about it, or this as many of the topics of the videos I make, they come up from observing people in various online spaces who are at some step in the process to move abroad. And one of the things that I have noticed is a lot of these people, they don't think like immigrants. And I think that's part of the reason they struggle when they leave their home country. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Yesterday, during Rashida Dow, she talked about Americans, US Americans, those of us from the United States, often behaving and believing that we are the prize, and we're really not. I mean, if you think about it, we are groomed that way from a very, very young age. America is the best. We are the best. Nobody does it any better than us. Um, so it's not shocking that we travel around with this. I'm not going to say it's a chip on our shoulder, but there's a certain amount of entitlement and arrogance that we have as people from the United States. And as Rashida said yesterday, we're not the prize. Think about how that impacts your experience when you're living in another country, if that's the energy you're bringing to it. So I would argue that people really need to start thinking like immigrants. Um, if you think to your personal experience in your life, the immigrant stories you've heard, the immigrants you've met, well, first of all, let me qualify something. Traditionally, people who move abroad, who leave their home country, are either extremely wealthy or they are completely the other end of the spectrum and they are leaving their home country out of desperation. I think part of the reasons that Americans struggle so much is there's a relative wealth there. Like there's this whole, and myself included, this whole wave of people in the US who are thinking about leaving and would probably classify themselves as uh, middle class. But when they go to another country, they may have some relative privilege, but this idea, they don't, maybe I'm not framing this the right way, but they don't fit the typical general immigrant mold because people who have a lot of money move to another country and they still have a lot of money and money makes things happen. You having trouble getting your immigration process, if you got money, you can hire somebody to help you through that. You have trouble where you don't speak the language, you can hire somebody. So but people who are on the other side of the spectrum who don't have as much money, the people who have immigrated to the US, think about the hustle and the tenacity and the problem solving and the ability to pivot that they often have. And I'm not seeing that as much from a lot of the folks, middle class folks in the US who choose to move abroad. So I might almost say, first of all, let's kind of think about how we refer to ourselves. There's the whole debate about the term expat versus immigrant. There are folks who will tell you, well, brown people are immigrants, white folks are expats. That's not wrong. But, when I lived in China, when I lived in Kuwait, you better believe I was an expat because I had no intention to stay. I had no intention on building a life there. But I have always considered myself an immigrant when it comes to Mexico, because I planned to be here indefinitely. I plan to become a part of the community in some way. So, yeah, okay. I like this, Halisi. I'm an expat from the US and an immigrant to Portugal. I like that. And so when I say we could all benefit from thinking like an immigrant, um, that what I mean by that is remembering that when you go to a new country, that government, their first obligation is to their citizens, not people who have elected to come there. And being frustrated at a country's policies and feeling like you are entitled to some kind of special privilege or things should work the way they worked in your home country, you don't live in your home country anymore. An immigrant figures out, okay, these are the rules of the game. How do I play this game then? Um, you know, I feel like an immigrant realizes that their new country doesn't owe them anything, that they didn't have to let you come to that country. I see this a lot with a specific group from the US who are always so quick to say things, not just about Mexico, but I see this because I'm a member of multiple communities for different countries, but I see this over and over like, oh, well, they should be thankful we're here, that we brought our money, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, a country does not have to let you move there. They don't have to have immigration laws. I saw a lady post on the expat app the other day one of the countries she was interested in, and I'm assuming based on her question, she hasn't really gotten into her research yet because if she had, she would know that that's a country you can't immigrate to just willy-nilly. If you don't have a job there, they're like, we don't need you foreigner just to come hang out in our country. So yeah, a lot of when I say think like an immigrant, it is letting go of some of this assumed privilege. And I think those of us from the West are more guilty of this than other people. Um, what else is on my list? Um, you know, one of the attributes often assigned to immigrants is that like they make things happen for themselves. They are scrappy, they are resourceful. One of the biggest things I see now is folks want to leave the US and they have their mind set on this idea that I need to find a remote job. Now, think about the immigrants who live in your community. How many of and I know it's 2023 now, but how many of them are bringing jobs with them versus they are either doing some work that locals find undesirable or they've created a business for themselves? I have told y'all on more than one occasion, I am a reluctant entrepreneur. I would not be working for myself if it wasn't a way to afford me the lifestyle that I have now. So, maybe in your journey abroad, thinking like an immigrant might mean considering entrepreneurship. It is not for everybody. Now, I'm not telling you to go to another country and try and find work there, because that is often difficult. Although there are some countries that have critical shortages of labor, and so if the idea of entrepreneurship is that repellent to you, maybe those are the countries you should consider to move to. Um, I'd also say, it's important for us to think like a local, I mean, not think like a local, think like an immigrant when it comes to how we interact with the community, with the people there, continuing to put everything in the currency of the country you came. And I know part of it is if your money is still coming from the US, it is hard to not think in terms of dollars. But the danger in that is we'll be in somebody else's country and we'll talk about how cheap it is. People do that here in Mexico all the time, and they talk about how cheap Mexico is, and they fail to realize that the minimum daily wage is like 207 pesos per day. That's like for a 12-hour workday. When you do the conversion, we're talking about like $8, $9 a day, so to say, well, I'm paying what is the equivalent of $2,000 in rent for this luxury penthouse, and that's so much cheaper than when I was back home. Yeah, but for the people who make money in the local currency, people who have lived here, for the majority of them, would they consider that cheap? And being loud about proclaiming those things on the internet, like that is not a bad look. Like, I don't want to say you're a guest in these other people's countries, but you kind of are until you become a citizen. I have permanent residency here, but until the point that I become a citizen, I'm kind of like a stepchild in Mexico. Yeah, they treat me like one of their kids, but when it comes down to it, they may kick me to the curb, if my home country starts acting up or if I do something stupid. They still have the right to tell me, girl, you can't live here. You got to go somewhere else. Um, so and then interacting with the people who live in that country, moving to a country and creating a life where you can continue to only operate and speak in English. Surround yourself with other people who are foreigners. Like, is that really how you want to build a life abroad? Is that really how you should build a life abroad? I don't think so. I mean, if the shoe were on the other foot, again, part of the reason that you're moving to this other country is because you want some of the things that that country has to offer. So choosing ways, authentic ways to integrate and connect with the people and become part of the community, I think that's really important. Immigrants add value to their new country in some way, actively, not just by showing up. So those are my thoughts. Yeah, the minimum wage here in Mexico is going up January 24th. But here's the thing, the vast majority of people don't even make the minimum wage. It's going up to like 249 pesos, which is great. It's like a 20% increase. But the vast majority of people don't even make that money. Okay, I'm just seeing if there were any questions in here. I like this sunflower AD. Before I make that move abroad, I'm working on why I want to move in healing. Because I don't want to bring those issues with me. Free up that old baggage to freely immerse yourself in the culture. And I'm not saying, here I am 4 years later living in Mexico. I'm integrating myself into the community is still a work in progress, particularly because my language skills are not where I want them to be. But I think there is something to be said for actively trying to connect with and integrate into the community as opposed to isolating yourself. Um, Rashida talks about this a lot too, that, folks are like, um, that and I think I mentioned this in yesterday's video, that when you move someplace, you need to connect with foreigners because there are going to be some elements in your life that locals really, they have no place to speak to you about on that. But then there are areas, so you need some foreigners in your life, but you also need to connect to the local community as well. Okay. All right. Hey, Tracy, I did a video on December 1st, on the first day of Vlogmas, where I talk a little bit about how the residency process works here in Mexico. So go ahead and check that out. If you go to my YouTube channel, I'm making a playlist of all of the Vlogmas videos, but also there is a playlist there called How to Move Abroad, where I talk about a variety of things. So yeah, like Halisi, signed up for tango class, all in Portuguese, hoping to meet some folks to hang out with. I have signed up for salsa and I've taken spring screen printing. I am, next month I am hoping to put a dent in my language deficits by spending 3 weeks working with folks who don't speak English so that I can immerse myself and hopefully improve things there. So I don't know. I am curious. What do y'all think about this idea of thinking more like an immigrant when you move abroad? In particular, I think the areas that I see it show up the most here is when it comes to work. People expecting that them being a foreigner is a positive and should entitle them to you know uh, to a job. Getting the right to live in a country and getting the right to work, those are two separate things. Just because you're a foreigner, I mean, actually, if you're just a foreigner and you don't even have language skills, to me, that's a knock against you. That doesn't automatically put you ahead, or that people, like, oh, all these jobs require me to speak Spanish. Yeah, because that is the language of business here. That is, the language that everybody is using. And then the other place that I see it show up is also when it comes to housing. Um, and this, I think, goes back to what I was saying before about expectations. People thinking that this should work the way it did in my previous country, and because it doesn't, I'm gonna be pissed off about it, and I'm gonna talk loud and obnoxiously about it, and I'm gonna denigrate folks because this doesn't work like it did where I used to live. This is a new country, and they have a new way of doing things. And who is to say? Maybe I prefer the way they did it back home, but who is to say that the way things were run back home is superior? We often come from a place that we make that assumption, but that may not be the case. That may not be the case. Yeah, I like this. Great points, because a person will earn compassion and empathy as well, better understood the immigrant issues. I think so. I think so. I think it's about ditching that privilege and coming with some humility. This is true. Because if you think about when people feel resentment about immigrants in the US, it is often because they've not made an effort to integrate. Now, I'm saying integrate. I'm not saying assimilate. I'm not saying folks need to give up who they are and their culture. That is not what I'm saying. Not at all. All right, y'all. Um, that is it for today. I am keeping all of these lives short, less than 30 minutes. I will be back here tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. But before I hop off, I do want to remind y'all, um, Ivana Robinson and we host Reclaim the retreat for Black women. I mean, the retreat for women and femmes who want to reclaim their lives, their happiness, their peace. Um, we are hosting another vision board party. It'll be in two parts. Uh, there is there's a graphic on my community page. The reason I am mentioning this is because if you saw that and you were like, oh, that sounds fun and I want to do it, there are only 7 spots left. We're keeping it very small so that it is intimate and interactive. So if you were planning to attend the vision board party, I would sign up soon, because literally there are only 7 spots left. After that, registration is closed. Okay, so I'll see y'all again here tomorrow. Bye, guys.